right. There he is, Coach Ellis. Hello, everybody.
Mike? What's up, Mike? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Welcome to another edition of the Coach's Corner on the Fitter and Faster Swim platform. I'm your host, Mike Murray. Today, we're thrilled to introduce you to an absolute living legend in our sport, the CEO, head coach of the Philadelphia Department of Recreation swim team, the legendary Jim Ellis. In 1971, Coach started the PDR swim team, which was the first African-American swim team in the country. Originally located in West Philadelphia at the Sayre Rec Center, then moving to the Marcus Foster Rec Center in the Nicetown neighborhood of Philly in 1979. Through 2010, Jim continued to coach swimming at Marcus Foster Pool, with the program qualifying swimmers for the U.S. Olympic trials from 1992 all the way to 2008. Coach Ellis has coached athletes to national age group records, USA Swimming national and junior national teams, and multiple Olympic trial finalists. Coach, I know you're so excited about bringing back PDR and its comeback in the last year. We're so excited to have you on the program. How does it feel to be back at PDR where it all began?
It's nice. It's nice. It's a happening. It's what's going on. One thing that you said, and most people use, I try to correct, we weren't the first swim team. I don't know where they picked that up. Someone put that in the media and ran with it, but by no means or stretch of imagination were we the first African-American swim team. At the time that I started, there were 3 other teams in Philadelphia going on from guys who grew up in Philadelphia. You know, I was fresh out of college at Cheney University and took a job at the rec department and started a team. So I was, coming in late. They were already started, but that was a story right there. We do like to say that we were the first team that aspired to national, international goals. So you can change that to that. And that was our mantra, and that's how we operated.
I heard Trevor Vreeland actually tell that same story, that there was a good group of 3 teams, and you guys did a lot of really fast swimming against each other early on.
Yeah, there was a lot of competition in the city. We were hosting meets, and so it became a big pride thing on what to do, who was the toughest, who was the fastest. But it developed a good relationship because the teams were on different parts of town. And so kids got to know each other through the sport, and it just enhanced the relationship in swimming. So it was a good thing, even though the rivalry was tough, but they made a lot of good friends on all the teams.
Tracy was mentioning, and he's watching right now, he just said, you're the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Tracy said in a podcast a few weeks ago, he had mentioned that the swimming between those 3 teams in the city kind of became a little bit like some basketball rivalries that had been happening that the kids grew up around. And there was a lot of trash talk, but at the end, they were all friends, and it just developed this really unique swimming atmosphere. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it did, because, like I said, people from different parts of the town, and to come together for an event like that, it was a happening. Like I said, it was intense rivalry, but it wasn't nasty by no stretch of the imagination. And the athletes, coaches, families, parents, they learn to respect each other. So they saw what someone else was doing, and they may have thought before we got together their kids were the best in the city. They said, whoa, there's someone else in town. And it really became a great exchange at the time. So it was nothing but good the way we saw it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the kids probably developed some good friendships that way too, early on.
Oh, to this day, a lot of them stay in touch with each other. Their kids are coming up now, and some of them get back together again. So yeah, it's been something that was fantastic.
You know, when I was preparing for this a couple months ago, when we first started talking, and Michael Normant and I have developed a friendly relationship as young coaches over the last couple of years. He was telling me, though the movie was great, you know, what he had wished it had shown more of is just how astute a student of the sport you are and what it means to constantly continue learning. Talk about how important it's been for you to tinker and learn, and as we like to say this day and age, nerd out on swimming.
Yeah, well, when I came along, like I said, when I started my program in '71, and I looked around the city of Philadelphia, looked around the country, my experiences growing up, a lot of African American swimmers that were good left the community and went to suburban teams, went to an all-white team. So they weren't role models. And I said, well, I'm gonna create a team where if somebody wants to aspire to make the nationals or Olympic team, they don't have to leave the neighborhood. I have what they need. And so I was forced into just reading, which I wasn't really forced. I loved it. And so I was reading everything I could on swimming. USA Swimming didn't have its educational program at the time, so ASCA was great. Anything I could get from ASCA and the Eastern States clinics was fantastic. And then I would just build upon that for the program. And I wasn't afraid to experiment. So I read a lot. I got a lot of European information, and even used a European Learn to Swim program at one time, as opposed to the Red Cross program, because I felt it was much more motivational, and the skills, there were just fewer skills, but the skills were geared towards developing a competitive swimmer. That's the was it the coaching, the swim coaches, National Swim Coaches Teaching Award or something like that. It's been a while, but that was a fantastic program that I had. And I read what everything the Australians printed out. I love the Australians. I liked what they were doing. And anything I could find, I read. And then I would try to use it and utilize it in practice.
When I was talking to Michael, he was saying also that, you know, when you first started and you had kids coming to the pool, it was a pretty tough neighborhood. Did I hear that you used to go to the subway station, pick the kids up, and walk them over to the pool?
Well, not all the way. Sometimes I would just walk the neighborhood because the pool at the time, we went there in 1980, and it was a tough neighborhood. There were gangs in the neighborhood. You could get mugged in the neighborhood. We had several parents that they were approached by gunpoint, you know, to get robbed when they were walking to pick up their kids. Several cars, you know, got broken into. So it was tough, but I wanted to establish the fact with the neighborhood kids that, look, these kids coming to the pool doing something different. If you want to swim here in the summertime, you're going to let these kids in the neighborhood do their thing. And so we worked it out. And they became, you know, special kids in the neighborhood, even though they weren't from the neighborhood. And so, yeah, it was that way coming in, because it was a nice little walk from the subway. But once we got established and situated, there was no problem.
Tracy also mentioned that you guys had a really great culture of support from a parent standpoint. What are some of the things that you did early on at PDR to build that parental support from the community?
Well, from the first day we started practice, I made it very clear that we were taking no swimmer without a parent, and the parent had to participate. So from day one, we had parent meetings once a month, because I felt in order for me to have success at a high level, the parents needed to understand what it was that we were trying to do. I wanted them to sit in the balcony and watch what I was asking their child to do. I wanted them to see what their child was doing or not doing. And so that was key for me in having a program, because when I looked around, a lot of people were saying, well, parents aren't allowed on the deck, parents aren't allowed to watch practice. And I said, well, I'm going the other way. And I needed to go the other way, because these parents that were coming didn't swim, and they didn't have the knowledge of the sport. So what better way than to have them at the pool every day, just absorbing more and more and more and more until they became knowledgeable parents, and they went to becoming officials, officiating, timers at meets. They weren't afraid. So we grew the whole team, not just the swimmer. We grew the whole team.
That's so great that you're talking about that. And I'm glad I asked you that question, because as you were giving your answer, one of the coaches who runs a program for diversity in Oakland, California, said the model that he used to set everything up is what you did in Philly. So I know so many people are appreciative of that, and I know that that was groundbreaking for our sport.
Yeah, it had to be because they had resources as well. They didn't know it, but I tapped into their resources big time. You know, parents that were connected in a lot of different ways. They made a major contribution to the team.
Absolutely. I want to jump right into some of the fun stuff because I know you're ready to rock with it. And I know how excited you get when we talk about training, sets, and workouts. And today's webinar is about challenging your athletes with work. I think you're learning how to challenge a certain athlete right now. And boy, is he responding well to it. So in December this year, Destin Lasco busts out a 140.7 200 back. He goes 135 in the 200 free. He goes on to post 2 or 3 other meet records. What are we doing at PDR with Destin to get this kind of performance so quickly after he came over to your team?
Great question. I'm glad you think it was quickly. For us, it was 2 years. It was a journey, and he became my Jedi warrior, and I was Yoda, so I had to educate him. But one of the things which, before we even get to Destin, was his coach, Dimitar, who he grew up with. We were great friends. And so I had a chance to watch Destin from the time he was 9 years old and met his parents, developed a relationship with them, and then kind of had a relationship with Destin because the first time I saw him swim was a 500 free. And anybody who was standing around me, I said, "You're looking at it." And they said, "Looking at what?" I said, "You're looking at the second coming." I said, "This boy is real deal." Now he's 9 years old, 10 years old. And Coach Tracy went to his own all-star meet, called me from the meet, and he was just raving about this kid. And I said, "Yes, we know. We know." So we had a chance to watch him his whole career. So when his dad called me and said they were leaving, I said, "What?" You know, and he explained to me why. And I said, "Okay, fine." And, you know, Dimitar was fine with it. And so for them to drive from Atlantic City every day, I said I had to step my game up. I said I had to go in my bag of tricks and get it going. And so once he came in on the deck, then I went from a coach observing someone else's swimmer to now I'm observing a swimmer that I'm responsible for. So the game had changed.
Right.
And so I had to evaluate. So it took me a couple of weeks to really evaluate what we needed to do. And we knew where his weaknesses were, swimming meters as opposed to yards, because at times didn't convert from yards to meters the way I watched him swim. So I knew there was something wrong there. We went to Winter Nationals the first year he came in. I think it was down in Virginia. And I watched him swim there. His 200s were okay. Then he gets up and swims the 100 free and the 200 IM, and I'm like, where'd that come from? So he tried to give me an excuse that, well, I don't train meters, coach, and I have difficulty with it. I said, well, then how do you go 49 for 100 free? You never train meters. I said, how do you justify that answer? So he laughed at that. He said, yeah, I think you got me there. And from there on, we moved on, and we just went into redoing some things up in the yardage. And people won't believe it, but we got into his strokes heavily and making some changes in his stroke. We put in some breathing patterns, stuff, a lot of drills, just to get his whole stroke just where we wanted to be and for it to hold up under the gun and under competition. So it took us a while to get there. So when he swam at 140 that fall, starting in September, I told him where we were going to go yardage wise per week. And his jaw hit the ground, his eyes rolled around in his head. But, and we train short course meters all the time. So we got him up to about 65,000 meters a week. And we were getting it in.
That's good work.
Yeah, it was real good work. And age groupers. He's an age group. He was just a big kid, and so that's what we did. And from there, we started working on other things. We give him a little shot every now in the arm, or let him swim yards, and he loved that. So by December, he was ready to swim a yard meet because he didn't swim high school, gave up high school swimming. And so he goes up to Rutgers, which is a nice pool anyway. So if you can't swim fast there, you can swim fast. And I love it. And he put it in. He had some great races too.
Oh, absolutely. And you touched on a lot of things there, Coach, that I want to jump into because I think they're so important. And you and I have a very similar training philosophy. But when we talk about the importance of volume, right, it creates this huge dynamic discussion in USA Swimming right now. How much is too much? How little is too little? Where do different programs fit in? And everybody's unique, and there are aspects of all different types of training that are positive. But talk to us about why, for you and your program, high volume is important.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially everybody kind of wanting to follow the Michael Andrews thing at one time. A lot of kids just like, oh, that's it. We want to do that.
Right.
But I felt with development, of age group swimmers and what Mother Nature gives you, the power is not there unless someone is just very mature for their age. And so you want to work with Mother Nature gives you, and basically that's aerobic development. You want to give them the best cardiovascular system that'll carry them through for the rest of their lives. And that way it's volume. And it's not garbage volume, but it's just the fact that mentally the swimmer sits down after keeping a journal and they see through year after year after year, the amount of work they're doing is going up. But they also see that the amount of work that they're doing, the times are coming down and the repeat times are coming down. So that means their cruise interval is coming down. So, if you're doing the T30 testing or how you do it, they can see the growth if you're putting that in the computer and posting that. And what better way to look good as a coach and have somebody swim the mile or you're 400 IM, they get a 10-second drop. Kid swimming a 50 gets half a second drop. So parents love you. 10-second drop, you look good.
That's good business, right? That's a good business model.
Yeah, but I just felt that one of my things that I say is I don't care how fast you can swim, it's how long you can swim fast. And so when you get that into their head and they understand that, then they're willing to go 3100s, 4100s, 5800s, and put them on a clock and not just like swim and get 40 seconds, 50 seconds rest. We take them and put them on the time, and if they're paying attention, they see the growth. Then they start believing in it. Yes.
The other thing I heard you talk about was changing some of what Destin was doing in his breathing for freestyle. And I know that you and I have had discussions before. You started having him focus on breathing bilaterally because, as you said, he was leaning on his one arm a little bit. And I think a lot of coaches this day and age are seeing what some college programs are doing, and they're allowing the athletes to breathe whenever they want. My take on that is once they get to college, they're yours. But I want my athletes breathing bilaterally. You had an interesting way of fixing some of what Destin was doing there. You used a clicker. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, he had it when he was growing up, and I think he got away from it for a bit. But I was in a stroke rate, in its tempo. And we felt that and Destin's a very smart young man, sport-wise. You talk to him about the sport, he's into all that, in the training, the times, the color charts, and so forth. So I felt it was very easy sell to get the clicker in, count a stroke, get a stroke count, then get the time, and just do it faithfully. And his mother would sit in the stands and count his strokes. She knew every stroke he was taking, how many. She knew when something was off. And that's where I wanted him to be with his stroke, because I felt that would also give him the confidence to make the change from yards into long course meters. Get him to focus in on something other than the hurt pain and agony that you might deal. But he's got some homework to do. And I felt that would help make an easy transition. but he's efficient. Everybody would look at him and say, boy, this kid is efficient. But we knew we can make him much more efficient
Right.
with his stroke. He had great catch out front, great entry, but the breathing, he started laying on a stroke on one side. He's breathing to one side. Like you say, he's watching these college guys, these world-class guys. And I think Mike Bottom came to my pool at one time. He was recruiting a kid who was using our pool to train. He and I got into discussion on the styles of swimming and the strokes. And I told him, for young age groupers, I think symmetry was key. I want to develop the left arm and the right arm equally. And so I forced him to bilateral breathing training. We did a lot of breathing pattern things, 3, 5, maybe 7, but that was it. But it forced them to work both arms, and both arms developed evenly. And I felt they could do anything with the stroke. And when we got to racing, then racing would change. It could change. We could do what we wanted to do. But we would still experiment with breathing patterns. Even if as sprinters, swimming 100, where you're going to breathe every 3, every 4. But I wanted everybody to focus in on something that was go-to. When they were struggling, they go back to this, and you kind of pull them back in. So you always had a point of reference. And so we got him to do that. Plus a lot of drills. We start putting him on some drills. And we did a lot of drill work in practice. So you talk about volume. But a lot of the volume was just not just crazy pounding. It was just like, Alexander Popov stuff, swimming 800s, but working on nothing but technique, smooth and easy 800s. And that was the name of the game.
Absolutely. When you talk about that clicker, can you talk specifically about what you did with it to help him gain a better understanding of his tempo?
Yeah, we used it. We started out in freestyle. But then once we rolled him over and I felt his freestyle was coming along fine, we wanted to get into his backstroke because that's what he's been noted for, being a great backstroker. And so we said, okay, let's turn over on your back, start swimming backstroke. And he was complaining, it felt funny, And I said, well, here's the drills. We're going to do some drills. Then we put the clicker in and put him on some 50s and some 100s and got the tempo down. And bingo, his stroke started coming around. We felt he wasn't finishing the stroke with the right amount of snap at the end, and popping the shoulder out before the hand, making sure we got that rotation in there on his back. So that's what did it, and the clicker was it. So whenever I saw him getting off on a stroke count, put the clicker in, Des, and let's go. All right, let's get it in. And we did that for quite some time. And then a couple other my swimmers picked it up. They went out and got clickers and got their stroke count down. And it was amazing how they developed and start feeling that easy speed that I was looking for. If we're going to race the 200 and the 500, first half, I want that easy speed, and then, we kick it in after that. We get it.
Yeah, you talk about easy speed, and it's so critical, especially in those middle distance events. You look at the 500 freestyle this day and age, and boy, if you're not out 140.139 at the 200 at NCAAs, it's over.
Oh yeah, school's out. Yep. It's out, But we want you out that fast, but it's not that fast because you're under control. And so consequently, you're going to drop the hammer on the back half. It's showtime. Right. You pick up the kick, and then your stroke count's going to go up a little bit. So we did a lot. By getting some stuff from USA Swimming and looking at a lot of swimmer stroke counts in races, big meets, and we just studied that and looked at that. We went through the 100, the 200s, the 500s. We looked at all those events and then showed him where he was at. Somebody was comparable to his size or whatever, and that was an easy sell.
Yeah, so you're really taking the time to look at those things. The other thing that you and I talked about in pre-production was the importance of long course. And it's something that I've always really taken a lot of time on with our athletes at Victor, of how important long course is, because yards is important. Yards is important for getting to college. Yards is important for being able to contribute on relays in college. But if your goal is to make a national team or a junior national team or the Olympic team, you better be able to bring it long course. So Talk to us a little bit how you instill that in your athletes.
Yeah, that was a process. We started when, you talked about Trevor and Tracy coming along. George Breen was one of my mentors, and he had the Vesper Boat Club. And in Philadelphia, we had Kelly Poole. I think they had the 1976 Nationals there. But that was a pool that was part of the city's arsenal of pools. Went out and met George Breen. He invited us out. I took Trevor and Tracy out there at a young age. They couldn't keep up with all the big swimmers, but we were in there with the Mar Welshes and all those great athletes in the past. And we started training. When Vesper left and I got the keys to the pool, we set up a swim camp, and we hosted about 300 swimmers in the summertime. And from our minis, 8 and unders, to our senior group, everybody swam long course meters. One, I felt that without the walls, they were going to definitely develop a good stroke. Now you have to swim or pull whatever I'm giving you, and where there's a wall, there's no more wall, and you have to keep rolling, so you have to get that rhythm down. And we want him to get used to that. Once April got there, I didn't talk yards anymore. I talked nothing but meter times the whole time, and we kind of lived by that. And the kids just automatically fell into it. Half the kids fell into it because they didn't like turns anyway, so they loved long course. They thought, yeah, coach, we like that. It's less turns. But basically, our philosophy was we talk long course. That's the international standard. That's the Olympic standard. And that's the one that you really need to excel in. Short course yards is just fun. But when it's business, it's long course meters.
Absolutely. I think that it gets lost a lot in high school. And I'm always very supportive of our kids when they want to do high school. I'm also equally as supportive when they decide that they want to focus on club only training. How do you discuss that in your program at PDR?
That's a great question. There's a lot of people think in this area that I hate high school swimming, which is not the case. I just hate the way some of my families want to go about high school swimming. If you're training for nationals, you want to go to nationals, I believe that you can do high school swimming without breaking training during the season and still be successful, still get the recognition at your high school, and you can get what you're looking for, that gratification. But if your goals are bigger than that, you should be able to do high school swimming along the way. With that being said, I also geared some of my swimmers towards high school swimming. That's what I wanted them to do. That's what I felt they needed to do to build their confidence. I felt they needed more racing. And I felt that they weren't going to nationals. Okay, so this is what you need to do, and do it with enthusiasm, but don't break training. Don't just walk away from training altogether. And the kids that were successful follow that. And I had some families or swimmers that they wanted and got that instant gratification of beating up on some kids they really had no business swimming against. And they thought they were successful. When they came back to PDR, they were like left behind, because once the train leaves the station, we're not coming back for you. We're rolling. But I think high school swimming has its place. Definitely. I think it's good. But the schedule has changed. USA Swimming has changed it. Nationals are now in December, when it was down in March and April. So, things change. And so you have to kind of change with it, whether you like it or not, and make it happen. But I still believe you can be successful if you're a national level swimmer with high school swimming, and if it doesn't infringe upon just good, solid training.
Right. We touched on this a little bit, but we touched on it much more before we went live. Last month, I had Coach Urbanchek on the Coach's Corner, and he talked heavily about the significance of aerobic training and why it's so important in the development of young athletes. One thing that you said that really resonated with me, that's a big philosophical tenet of our program at Victor Swim Club. 18 and under, in my eyes, you're still an age grouper. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even maybe at 19, Destin just turned 19. I told him, I said, you're still young yet. You're still, you don't have your your full mature strength. That comes around 21, 22, and you're going to be in that transition period for another year. So, you know, swim with those distance guys, swimming over there with those guys. But yeah, it was a total philosophy of mine. Like you and I discussed, we went to juniors at Michigan, and John was giving a talk. And this was back in the day, because this is when he was putting out and introducing the color chart, you know, the pink, the red, the blue. And so I'm sitting in the meeting listening to everything he has to say. He brings the charts out, he talks about it. And I'm like, son of a gun. I said, that's what I do in my program. And so basically with him putting it out there, I mean, we weren't using color charts or anything. Everything was based on time, your best time, and then taking it from there and breaking it down percentage wise. This is where you should go for the, and he had the color charts. And I was like, well, isn't that something? So I kind of patted myself on the back. I said, Jim, you're on point. And that was confirmation that what I was doing was the right thing, because John definitely was into the aerobic work. Even his college swimmers, I don't think he recruited anybody under 200 free. I think all his guys that he had were 400, 500s, and even his college. I read anything I could read that John printed out because that was right what I was doing. And so I felt very good about that. Even to this day, I can't get enough of his stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I think age groupers need to understand that. Parents need to understand that. I think that's the big sell. Somebody thinks, oh, my kids should swim the 100. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe later on. But right now, we're going to swim this mile and get it done. Race it in practice, race those distance events in practice, and where I think you mentally develop a great athlete because they digest that, they think about that, and it's part of what they do for so long that they go about it differently when they're on the blocks.
So, you know, when you're a young coach and you're coming up and you see what somebody like a Greg Troy does or a Ray Lewis, and you want to challenge your athletes with work, and I know that's always been a big part of who you are. Talk about some of those really challenging weeks that you've put together. I know Trevor Vreeland and I know Tracy, they were hard workers, man. Talk to me about some of the impressive things they did when they swam for you.
Well, Trevor and Tracy, even though they're brothers, they were just they were tough. Tracy was successful from the age of 8 up until around 14, 15. He developed early. Tracy was a 7-year-old walking around with an 8-pack. Okay, so I mean, when Tracy got on the blocks, it was over. He would just take you to he just take you to the bridge, man. He got it in. And Trevor, he was going to be a late bloomer. I just saw it from the beginning. Just, you know, what he brought physically. But they both came along at the same time where I was developing a program, developing background, and they learned the concept of work. We just got it in and day out. Like I said, I varied the work. We didn't go into, you know, a whole lot of speed stuff all the time, but you know, when it was time for it, different times of the season, you know, I would go maybe 3 days of this and 2 days of that, and then 1 day a little bit of everything. I mixed it up, so they got a little bit of a little taste of everything. But the basic was background, man. Background on top of background on top of background, and they set the tone. After they left, I had a new group of kids that I had to go out to the garden and bring in a new group of kids, and we set the standard a little higher, and they took it to the next level where they could get it in. And we had the Teba Wades, the Jason Webbs, Braille Whites, and Kyle Hendricks. We had a lot of great swimmers that came along and adapted to it. I think one of the things that pushed me is that I love the 500 free or the 400 meter free, and I love the 200 free. I think those are some of the greatest races out. I like the IM, you know.
From that standpoint, Coach, you can train up and you can train down, and you can race up and you can race down.
Yes. I like to tell people, well, we develop long sprinters here. What do you mean by that? Well, if they're really a sprinter, they're going to start at 500 on down. Okay, we might get to the 50, on the way to the meet or something, but we're developing long sprinters here, take it or leave it. And this is who we are and what we do, just because of the growth. I believe in that. Didn't want to hurt my athletes. No shoulder problems. I think I had one shoulder problem in my close to 50 years of training based off of what they did in the pool. So we were very careful about that. We did a lot of paddle work, but again, we introduced it just slowly, and we watched everything we did with our athletes because that's what we were about. We knew we were going to get the yardage in.
The athletes who swam for you that I know, some of whom are coaches now, Atiba, Michael Norman, you mentioned them. They love to talk about how you wanted to make sure that the world knew that Black swimmers were not just sprinters. Talk to me about how you incorporated that into your team philosophy, how you incorporated that into your training.
Yeah, when I started a team and coming up, that's what most people talked about. 50. Oh, if you're Black, you swim. Oh, you're gonna swim the 50. You're gonna swim the 100. And I said, I don't want athletes like that. I want athletes that can do the whole gambit. Now, you may not be great, but you've been there. And so consequently, in order to develop that, we had to train that way. So the IM was important, swimming all strokes, swimming the different distances in practice, and going to the meet, you probably wouldn't even swim the 50 or the 100. Put them in every other event. And that's one of the things that we did, because I said, if you're a 50 or 100 man, you got one day you're swimming at the meet. If it's a 4-day meet, you're done. There's nothing else for you to swim. Why should I even take you travel somewhere to go to a meet? You're swimming 2 events. I said, that's not what's happening. So then I started pushing for high point awards when they were age groupers. Oh, let's go to meet and get the high point award. Only way you can get the high point award is from a whole lot of events. All right. So that was one thing that sold it. They go in, see these trophies, and they want one. Well, you're in every event. Let's go get it. And so then it just kind of became a way of life on the team that this is what they had to do, and this is what they were going to do in practice. So it was an easy sell because it's what I implemented and what I trained to and what I asked the people to do.
Did you take a little bit more gratification when your athletes started to excel and people started taking notice of your mastery, really, of the middle distance events?
That's a good question. Yeah, I wanted people to recognize us. Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted people to recognize us, that we weren't just in the beginning Black team out of an urban community. I wanted them to recognize us, that we were swimmers, we were athletes. And so I took a lot of pride in having our athletes swim the 800 free relay and racing it and knowing how to race it, to swim the mile and to race the mile, and knowing splits, reading the clock on the fly, reading the clock in practice, coming out of turns. I wanted them to recognize us, that we worked hard, because a lot of people wanted to write stories about us. And I got to the point where I turned down writers, because I asked them, what are you going to write about? This is a human interest story, or is this a sports story? And if it's a sports story, then you're concerned with how we train. And this is what I wanted people to do, is to put down how these young people trained, how their families committed to the training program to get their child to nationals. We didn't get to nationals because we ate certain kind of food. We got to nationals and competed and were successful because we trained hard. And like you mentioned, Greg Troy, he was one of the coaches that actually stepped up and asked me, damn, coach, what are you doing? And he asked me in a sense of training wise. And I consider him a great friend, because I knew what he was doing down there at Bowles School before he went to Florida. And we talked a lot of talk on the deck, talked a lot of coaching on the deck. And one of the few coaches actually wanted to talk training. You know, what are you doing for this? What are you doing for that guy? How'd you train this guy? And that's what gave me the chills, and that's what gave me satisfaction, is someone actually respected us and knew what we were doing by what the kids were doing in the pool.
Absolutely. Fair to say that the expectation when you walk on the pool deck for Jim Ellis practice, the expectation is attitude and effort. Fair to say?
Damn, man, how'd you steal that? That was on one of our T-shirts, man.
I got you. I got you.
That was on one of our T-shirts. Attitude, baby, attitude and effort. That's right. Yeah, I want to see the effort. You got to make the effort, and the attitude is going to allow you to make that right effort. That's the bottom line, and it works. It works.
Absolutely.
And the swimmers adopted that. You know, we had a great group in my career. I've been very blessed. Not only did I have good swimmers, I had some great athletes. They could have done everything else, but they chose to swim. So I was fortunate in that level. Made my job easy.
For sure. I've noticed that you talk a lot about athleticism when it comes to your athletes, and you call them athletes. And I think for most of us now, we're really thinking of our swimmers as athletes. But what are some of the things that you did at PDR from a dryland standpoint that challenged your athletes and developed some athleticism?
Basically, our dry land program was pretty basic. When Trevor and Tracy swam, I got some coffee cans and a couple of bars and filled them up with cement. And we used the extra genies. You know, we use stuff like that for dry land and basic calisthenics, just basic body weight stuff. Again, they're age groupers. Why am I going to have you throwing around some serious weight when you can't balance yourself? Something's not developed right. You end up with a back problem that's going to haunt you the rest of your life. So I always wanted to err to the good side, and nothing better than dry land. You know, planks, push-ups, dips, knee-ups, V-ups, just all that kind of stuff was what we do. And to this day, we still do that. Most people thought we had some crazy gym at our facility, but we didn't. I know in the 80s, when I left my first pool, went to the second pool, I bought a couple of used universal machines, and we ran circuit training. So we would get everybody in that training group to come in, get on a station, and we would just move on the clock, minute on, 30 off, and rotate through the station 3 times, and boom, we were in the pool. So that was it for as, you know, the physical fitness side, you know, on the deck, and then we would go into the pool and get the work done in the water.
How much pride do you take when you look at somebody like Atiba Wade, and he's now become one of the best dryland coaches in the country? How much pride do you have in that when you see your kids go on and they become great coaches like a Michael or a Atiba?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It makes me proud. And Atiba Wade was unique because he lived in the neighborhood I lived in. So Atiba Wade used to do some remarkable. I can see him walking down the street on his hands. This boy had tremendous body awareness. His vertical leap was just remarkable, and he had all the right tools. You know, this kid was a specimen. You know, what he had a national age group record was it 9 or 10 breaststroke, stood for like 19 years. It's fantastic. Great IM, and he was a great person. He was an artistic kind of kid because he swam breaststroke, and I got a philosophy. A lot of breaststrokers are artistic people. They're unique. So he had that kind of quality in him. And he was afraid of weights. He didn't want nothing to do with weights growing up. Even if you mentioned weights to him, nah. Now I see pictures of him, look like he's Mr. Universe.
I know.
but you don't see him lifting weights. He's doing body weight stuff. And, you know, I think it's great for a lot of kids who want to go in these gyms and start pounding stuff. If you can't do a plank for so long, or you can't do a V-up, and there's certain things that you just can't do, why go in the gym and wreck yourself? Yeah, I think it's crazy. And so we stay away from that. We stay away from that.
We do as well. You know, the biggest thing that we do as far as dry land, we do mostly body weight, plyometric stuff, but we do some med balls and things like that. But I'm with you there.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing. Stretching, you know, some yoga if necessary, if you can fit it in. But I think that's critical. A flexible swimmer is great.
Yep.
You know?
No doubt.
That's where your speed comes from.
Right.
You want to swim fast, be flexible. Okay.
When you're planning your season, Jim, how much volume are you averaging at when you're in your peak? And when you rest and taper at PDR, what's it look like?
Well, that's a good question. I plan my season starting from the end of the season. I work backwards. I kind of count out the weeks that way, see where I want to go, what meets are important, where I need to be, whether it's going to be a work meet or looking for some times. When you talk about yardage, it's based on the athlete or the group. Most of my kids, when I trained them, came in waves or groups. If I had like 40 kids in my training group, that was the maximum I ever had. I'd have 40 kids. I might have had 15 with national time standards. So September, October, November, we pretty much got it in. And I know at one point we were up to about 85,000 yards, 90 a week. And so we would swim that and then try to prepare for a meet in December where we went up to Princeton and Petty was there and Jersey Gators were there, Burnell's Gators were there. So at that time, I figured if I got in, and I dropped in percentages. I just didn't drop off the chart from anything. So if I got up to 80 and I wanted to go to that meet, I was down to about 70. And I figured, well, you know, that's going to be my rest cycle. And they'll swim fast. If they wanted to clip hairs or whatever, that's fine. Because I know after me, we're going back up again. But that's pretty much how I did that. And then I would come down off of that and start getting into a lot more pace work with them. Yardage would cut down 10, 15%, but the quality would go up at that time. Okay. And we were introduced that gradually, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, then 3 days a week, getting into something like that. We don't use that T word. I don't like the T word.
I'm glad you said that, Jim, because as we're talking about it, Trevor Vreeland just wrote in taper. Are we talking about taper?
Yeah, I don't like the T word. And that's one of the things that high school swimming, I think, affects kids. They say, oh, we're tapering, coach. I said, yeah, okay, then what are you doing? Well, we get in, swim about 1,500, and then we kind of float around. I said, well, no, that's not tapering. And so I don't use that word. You know, I talk about rest. And those guys, you know, that era, most of them said I didn't know how to rest. They wanted more rest. And I said, well, this is all you're getting, you know, and this is what it is. So get ready for it. But I think one of the ones that kind of really felt the brunt of that was Michael Norman. Michael Norman was a workhorse. From the time he joined the program, he came from New York, program out of New York, Trotz Finman, and came down to our program. He came with a box of swimming stuff, fins, paddles, Swimming World magazines, and he had some weights with him, and he walked in ready to go. And he was noted to be a breaststroker, but we had Michael swimming everything. He got it in faithfully, he worked hard, and I really pushed him hard when he was training, and resting him was it was tricky coming down with the rest because we wanted him to swim that 200 breast, and we knew the kind of work that was necessary. I think a lot of people don't realize the kind of work is really necessary to swim breaststroke, and the type of breaststroke that I perpetuated and the type of breaststroke that I felt Michael Norman was born to. So that took a lot of work, and it took us quite a few years to get him where he was good. And when he was 16, went to 54. Back then, that was popping, you know. And like I said, we wanted to go under 2 minutes for the 200 breast. We hit 2:00, and it was good swimming. But yeah, so yeah, I do believe in rest, but I do believe in a lot of active rest. So, you know, you can come to the pool you can get in the water, but we're resting. You know, we're resting. We're getting rid of all that lactate. We're getting rid of all the sore muscles. We're removing, you know, all the free radicals. You know, we're getting in and stretching out. But you're not going to sit at home and rest in front of the TV. You're going to do it here at the pool. And also about your diet. That was one of the things Destin and I talked about. You talked about that early. He was in the pH in the practice. I said, well, that's okay. We're not going to worry about that. I want you to embrace, you know, the pH. I want you to embrace the lactate. But we got into testing for pH when he was away from the pool in his diet. Okay, making sure that he was eating the right things, that it didn't change his pH internally. And so he embraced that. And that was another thing that I felt that helped him be very successful. You know,
one of the things about you that maybe some people don't understand is you're an educator first. And so, you know, your understanding of different principles in swimming is well beyond some coaches who are getting started. So talk a little bit about how you incorporate testing like that and why it's important to how you develop your athletes.
Yeah, I think testing is critical. Like you said, you were doing your T30 and you broke it down, you know, how you started out maybe a month earlier. You know, you did some 500, some 1,000, some 1,500s, you know, next thing you know, boom, it's 3,000. And I believe the same thing. I think you have to have benchmarks. Just like in school, I was a math teacher. And so I gave quizzes and quizzes and quizzes, and I dropped a big test on them, you know. And so I had the benchmarks. I knew what percentage of the material I gave the students knew, what they didn't know. So I reinforced that until I saw the percentages change. And the same thing with swimming. I think test sets are critical. And our test set day was on Thursdays. We did that back in the day because I felt they had enough glucose still left in their system to give them maximum performance. By the end of the week, a lot of kids were wrung out. I know a lot of coaches test on Saturdays because that's race day. But I always kind of use Thursday as my test set day. And it was a great day. And the kids realized that it was mental toughness that was being developed as well as the ability to swim the time. You know, you're asking them to hold, you know, 8 of these, and you want them 90% effort or something like that. And you put the chart up and you put it in the computer. They see what they're doing before you get to the meet. They see, okay, have I improved? So for me, testing is critical, you know. Even within the morning, my national level athletes, I asked them to take their pulse rate before their feet hit the floor in the morning. Just take that pulse rate, because you'll see if you're getting sick or not before you even get sick. I mean, something's different. Your pulse rate's up. It's changed a little bit, you know. And then you should ask the question, why? Did I get enough sleep that night or whatever? And so I think you can kind of catch some things early with the testing. I just think that's critical.
I want you to talk about giving the athletes ownership of these things, because what I'm hearing from you, and of course I have a trained ear as a coach, but you're putting a lot of responsibility on the kids. And it goes part and parcel to what we're talking about today, is challenging our athletes with work. It's work to remember to do that every morning. But if you're taking the time to do the little things, thinking about your diet, you know, making sure you're taking care of your schoolwork, I know that those are all important things to you. So talk about how you got the kids to buy in and take some personal accountability.
Yeah, I started out when kids were 8 years old on our mini team. You know, parents said, "We're not going to walk them to the blocks." Nah. We'll tell them what heat and lane they're in. They're on their own. You know, and I wouldn't just do it cold. I knew the swimmers that I could do it with, and I eased the other swimmers into it, where I want them to be attentive at the meet. I want them to pay attention to the scoreboard and the clock, pay attention to the heat sheet. You know, where am I at? What am I doing? You know, kids wrote their times on their events on their arms with Maddie marker and all that. That was a sense of accountability. I believe accountability is critical. And that's part of my philosophy, part of my program. I talk about the triangle of accountability, where the coach is accountable to the swimmer and the parent. the parent's accountable to the coach and the swimmer is accountable to the coach and the parent. Without those things, without that triangle, you're not going to have success. There's no way that you're going to have success. So accountable is critical. I preach it as a team. I preach it in the parent meetings. And people say, you have parent meetings once a month. I said, yeah, because I'm talking swimming, talking coaching. I want to educate them. And then I'll take each swimmer individually and what their weaknesses are and pull them to the side. We have conversations, we have meetings. I tell them what I want them to specifically do for themselves. And so I sell that as well. So I sell the team, sell the parents, and I sell each individual swimmer what it is that I feel they need to do to be successful on their own. And then you can see the swimmers who come back to you and talk that talk. Yeah, well, coach, I took my pulse rate. Oh, I did this. And now I know they're buying in, and they'll see that and they'll relate that to success.
Absolutely. You know, we have a lot of your former athletes on right now because I can see who's in the webinar. I want to ask you a question that might get some old school PDR competitiveness flowing here in the chat box. But the question is, most impressive set that you've seen from one of your swimmers over the last 20 years?
I can't answer that question. The reason why I can't answer that question, because when I came up with crazy sets, or what they may have thought were crazy sets, because my swimmers' attitudes were so great, we got busy and got it in. So, I mean, it's like if we're in November, December, and we're working, you hear nothing but the water. You hear them snapping the flip turns. You hear them reading the pace clock. We're getting it in. So, every sets, every workout, it's all impressive, and that's why I've enjoyed it so much. Because when we're getting it in and working hard, like a T Wade and those guys came through, they were pushing each other in practice. I mean, the banter was over lanes. You know, they were talking splits and times, reading the clock. I didn't have to read it. I mean, they were reading when they got to the wall. So that's what made it fun. Practice was big fun then. And Trevor will tell you, you know, when I had that group about 45, we were starting at both ends of the pool. I split the team up and we push off, and like it was showtime. So yeah, I don't know, impressive sets. I don't know. I think when Michael Norman got down to 54, that was impressive from where he came from. Just what he did was unique. And of course, we had a lot of other swimmers come after that. Jason Webb, people, if they didn't know Jason Webb, they walked in the pool and saw him swim. They figured he was about 6'2". When he got out of the water, he was 5'8", but he swam big. He swam real big, and because he trained big, and I can give him anything to do, and he would get it done. I had a bunch of women that came along during that era, and you didn't want to get in the lane with them. They just got in. I had a couple of distance girls that were really tough, that put down some great numbers in practice, and they run a guy out the lane. You know, look, don't get in this lane if you can't do this. So that's what made it unique. A lot of people ask me that, and it's hard for me to think of that because, like, I like to think that anything I give them is tough, and they're going to do it, and they do it with the right attitude and make a major effort at getting it done, and that's what makes practice fun.
Yeah, Jaja Wade said Jason Webb going 5,400 back in practice. Tracy Vreeland said practice is like being at a meet.
Yeah, it was. I had a couple of kids make junior national cuts in practice. You know, we were getting it in, and we did a set, and you know, one of my cycles, that set you and I talked about with Michael Norman, with the that cycle. We did that with all the strokers. The times may have varied, but I had 2 lanes backstroke, 2 lanes breaststroke, 2 lanes butterfly. Everybody did that set, and I could see where they were at. I could measure them by the way they attacked that set. Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah, that set I had here because it's one of our next questions. And I asked Michael, I said, what's some of the best breaststroke sets? What can I ask Jim about? And he was telling me a little bit about it. And then Marty Keating, our friend Marty, told me the same thing. You got to ask Jim about the breaststroke sets that Michael used to do. And that set, you and I talked a little bit about it, but it was 4 or 6 times through, depending on where they were in the season. It was
Right.
2 100s, 145 at 200 pace, 100 easy, 4 50s on a minute at 200 pace, 8 25s at 200 pace, 100 easy. Go through that 6 times, but you had to hold your stroke count the whole way.
Yes, yes. Stroke count and pace. You had to hold that. And they had to grow into that. And what was nice about that set is, as I told you before, I like to write sets like that would have a lot of variations. Okay. So when Michael said the 2 100s, I can make that a 400 where they would kick a 200, pull a 200, then come in with the 450s, and then come in, then swim something easy, then give me the 425s. Then I would change that up. I said, give me takeout speed for that. How are you going to take your race out? And then swim 100 easy and do the cycle over again. And Michael, like I said, when he got down to 54, his splits were in the practice were just unreal. I just knew he was going to blow it out the box because he was right on point with every split on every part of that cycle. Like I said, we would start off with that maybe 3 times, and 4 times, and 5 times, and maybe 6 times through, and then back it back down. Of course, as I was resting, and back it back down to 5 times, 4 times, and 3 times. And for a breaststroker, because a lot of breaststrokers, once they get tired, they can't hold their stroke or something goes. Michael adapted and he held that, and all my strokers held that. It was critical, but I could mix it up, and that's what I liked about that set. I could run through a lot of different variations, and I felt that was a good measuring tool in practice.
So you could put that set in feasibly with freestyle. You could do it with any stroke, right?
Yes. Destin got introduced to that kind of set, and I saw his eyes roll back in the back of his head the first time he got it. And he was like, "You must be kidding me." I said, "Yeah," but he learned how to get it in. It took me a while, and one of the great things about Destin coming to the program is that the parent realized that if you're getting ready for Olympic trials, 2 years out is really not enough time, but that is the shortest amount of time if you're on it that can help you prepare for Olympic trials. And I needed every bit of 2 years, and we were just rounding the curve when the pandemic hit. He was preparing for Indianapolis. That was the meet before Olympic trials, and we had one more meet in Buffalo, that super sectional type of meet that we felt that we could do while we were still getting work. He could measure and see where he was at. He was chomping at the bit to go there too. After he did that 140 up there at Rutgers, he had a great meet up there. He had some great races, and the time was okay, but the races were critical because we had it on video and showed him where he made his move and where he made some mistakes. But the time he won the race, but I said that's what was important. It was a race. You race that, you just let it go and fly. And we had to teach him that and make him aware of what he was doing, and what was the difference between a good swim and a great race. So he was ready to go.
I'm going to be excited to be on deck with you at trials next summer and get to see how he does. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so too, because we felt we had a secret weapon in the 200 IM, and we had one other event that we feel he'll really do well, but I'm not going to talk about it. At this stage of the game. But he came around. His 200 IM really came around. He was really learning how to swim it in meters. And if you just look at the results from the Pro Series meets, you can see where he was starting to get the first half of the race down, and the back half where it was coming, and the pandemic hit. But yeah, so it was good stuff, man.
One thing I heard you say when I was a kid, just getting started, I used to walk over to wherever you were. I just keep my ears open, and you were talking to one of your athletes, and you said, in this 200 IM, you better be in a position to use your best stroke as a weapon. And I've
Yes.
taken that all throughout all of my coaching. Talk about why it's important to have your best stroke be a weapon in the IM, but that's not enough. What I heard from you is you have to be in a position to use it as a weapon.
Yeah, I agree. In going after the IM, I watched Dick Schulberg. I watched Bob Matson. They had great 400 IMers in Middle Atlantic. Some of the great coaches, and I try to take a little bit from each one of those guys and come up with my philosophy on getting IMers ready. And the best stroke is it. That's it. The best stroke you should take, if that's your best stroke and you're the man in that stroke, no one should have the splits that you have for that part of the race. I don't care who they are. That is yours. You own that. I don't care where it comes in the race. It's yours. You own it. If it's a breaststroke, okay, it's a little further down the line. But our distance training and our easy speed, great technique, and swimming the race correctly, it's going to set you up for swimming your best stroke with the best splits possible, and you'll be able to nail that. And so we did a lot of switching stuff in practice, just trying to develop how they went after the whole race. And we did a lot of building, the first 50s build, second 50s race. When you're doing your switching sets like that on the IM, we put a lot of that in there. A lot of 200s, 100 back, 100 breast, 100 back, 100 breast, because I wanted to transition as well. Transition is critical. I think a lot of people can't transcend from one stroke to the next. I felt if we could do that better than everybody else, that would also help us tremendously, especially in meters. That first 15 meters off the wall is critical. And that's something that we were getting Destin aware of as well with his training. His underwaters are so great, but just getting to that 15-meter mark efficiently was critical.
Absolutely. I can't wait to watch him swim next summer. It's going to be fun. Jim, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was you've been fortunate to have Tracy coaching with you now for, I think, 26 years. How important is it to have an assistant like Tracy who's so dedicated and loyal to the program at PDR, and that he'll continue to hold that same level of excellence?
Well, Tracy Freeland's been with me since he was, 6, 7 years old, and grew up, went to college, came back whenever he could. Tracy Freeland won the very first award that our program ever got at a swim meet. Because our first swim team was called Sayre Aquatic Club. That's Sayre. And we had that.
The rec center, right?
Yeah, it was the rec center in 1980. And then from 1980 on, we switched over to PDR. But Tracy, for me, got the first ribbon. I think it was still hanging in the rec center the last time I spoke to somebody over there. But Tracy and Trevor saw the trials and tribulations that we had to go through as a program. And we use racism as an educational tool. We didn't lash out or get crazy. I wanted them to hear what people were saying. Whatever we father and son were talking. They said, whatever you do, don't let those black kids beat you. And they heard that. So I said, okay, so now what we're going to do? Well, we're going to kick his butt. Okay, that's what it is. We're not going to empower racism. My whole philosophy was about that. We're not going to empower that. I started coaching as a protest. Grew up, came through college in the 60s. Martin Luther King was shot. They were protesting. And I just wanted to start a team where I wanted to do something positive for the community as opposed to protesting. They were the first family that really committed to my program. Their mother was undaunting in what she did, single mom, never missed a practice, never missed a practice their whole career. Okay, and so Tracy and Trevor grew up in the sport. All we had was Swimming World. Once my Swimming World came, I read it quickly, gave it to them. They gave it back. It looked like it'd been through the ringer. We knew every time what everybody was doing across the country, and anything that I read, I made them privy to what I was reading because I was educating them, and they sucked it up. So when Tracy got out of college, came home, and he kind of helped me coach, and he's been there ever since. I can't get rid of Tracy, you know. But he's more than a coach. Okay, sometimes he's like a son because he's been with me his whole life, and then all his daughters swam for me. And he's a swimming geek as well. He can tell you anytime on anybody. You think Trevor's good, Tracy's just as good. So really, I keep him around because now I don't have to remember all that stuff anymore. I said, Tracy, what do we do at such and say? He just crank it out, and but his enthusiasm is right on point. He wants to win. He knows what it's like to be part of an all-black team. Then he also knows what it's like to be part of the most diverse team in America. Because in the 90s, we changed. We changed tremendously. And he was part of that. He experienced all the things that went along with that. And he watched me grow as a coach, and he supports everything I do. We don't agree all the time. Okay. We go at it sometimes, big time. But I want him to be the best that he can be. And the relationship and the partnership has been great because he's someone that I can trust. He came through the program. He did all the drills that every kid that we're asked to do now. He experienced everything that's part of my philosophy, and he knows it made him a better swimmer. He knows if you do what Jim tells you to do, you're going to be fine. And that's what he sells. So I could walk away for months, 2 months. And this last year I had some issues where I had some surgery, and he carried the ball. Okay. Of course, we were on the phone every day getting it done. And so he was critical. Same thing with his brother, Trevor, critical. Came along at a critical time. Not that I didn't have someone else in the program. We had a young man named Elwood Madison. We called him Woody. And he was instrumental. If you saw the movie Pride, Bernie Mac kind of played his role. And he was instrumental in our Learn to Swim program. We had a fantastic Learn to Swim program. And any kid that's been on the swim team, you ask them about Woody, you're going to get a story. Okay? So, he was a character, and he's passed away, but he's a legend. He's a legend in the program. For the kids that came along back in the 70s, 80s, the newer kids don't know about him unless we tell them about him, but Tracy's there to tell the story. So Tracy's been very instrumental in selling swimming and selling PDR or soccer, whatever it was, wherever we were doing. He was instrumental in doing it, and he takes criticism. He listens to what I say. He trusts me with his daughters. Okay. So it's been a great relationship with the whole family.
One thing that I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it there, and we all hope that we have great assistants like Tracy and great coaches in our program, especially when they come up through your program. How do we continue to promote the sport to athletes of all backgrounds, social circumstances, ethnicities, and continue to promote swimming as an example of inclusivity in sport? I think that our sport has a wonderful opportunity to kind of set the standard. How do we do that? From somebody who started it at the ground level, how do we continue to build on what you've done?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a heavy question. I think that the effort has been made. I know the effort's been made. I think that we just need to put it out there a little bit more. I wrote a piece for Dick Hanula in their book, The Coaching Bible, Starting Inner City Team. I think I just gave the basics there. But one of the things I touched upon, which I think is important, access to swimming pools, access to great swimming pools, not some swimming pool in the basement where there's no windows, ceilings are low, the air is bad. That's not going to keep anybody in the sport. And I've been fortunate to have good pools my 50 years of coaching in the city of Philadelphia. I think the other thing is, and USA Swimming a lot of people attack USA Swimming about what you're not doing, and I go a different route because they've embraced a lot of things and a lot of suggestions that I made. They tried and put the money into it. I was part of it, and after a long run, we said we didn't get the results we were looking for, and we're educating the coaches. We're putting it out there, and we're still not getting kids at the national level swimming fast, a broader base, because I think there's a pool of talent out there that we haven't touched. Let's look at Simone Manuel. Simone Manuel is a great swimmer. She speaks well. She talks, and when she's interviewed, she talks about I work hard. She sells hard work. And I think that's one of the weak areas of USA Swimming when they chose athletes of color. They didn't focus in on the hard work that was necessary and the hard work the parents had to do to get the child there. So when you speak to Simone or her mom or dad, they tell you about that level of commitment. We can't shy away from that. We have to put that out front and center. This is what it takes to get to this level. We need to sell that. We need to see more of people that look like them, look different than the 90% that's in the sport, and get them to believe and build some self-confidence. And also let them know it's fun, it's healthy. I sell a swimming culture, a swimming community. And this, again, why I want the parents knowledgeable that swim on my swim team. Because then the next thing you know, I see parents in morning workout coming in, getting the lane. They're swimming while their child is swimming. I see the parents becoming officials. I see parents helping run swim meets, and then they sell it. And I've seen some other teams around the country making those moves now. You know, like you talk about Trevor and Tracy. All we talked about is finding talent around the country. We knew every black kid that was swimming in America at one time or another. We just want to know what was out there. And so I think that we just need to, the number one thing is access to swimming pools. Really, I think one of the things that helped my team grow is I had access to swimming pools, and basically I had almost unlimited pool time to develop my athletes, get in the number of yards that we needed to, the number of days that we needed to, the continuity was there, and I think that's critical. But also, swimming is a way of life. Swimming changes lives, okay? And people need to sell that as well. If you look at my alumni, I don't know who else is on there, but everybody that you said, they're successful away from the pool now. And they all come back and tell me it's the things they learn, training daily, weekly, monthly, year after year, their whole lives, that help them to get out into the business world and endure that. They said business world is easy after what I took them through. So I just think that we're making an effort, but I think it could be a little bit more. You know, I think the movie Pride, when that came out, that was critical. People looked at it a lot of different ways, but they saw, you know, the only swimming movie that was ever made was made about, you know, PDR. So, and I'm still alive when they made the movie. So that was great. And with the pandemic going on now and Black Lives Matter, and I'm at home, I decided to write a book, you know, because a lot of people have asked just the questions that you're asking me, and I'm working on a book. I think that's the hardest thing I ever done, you know, is trying to do that. But yeah, I think we're on the right track. We're getting exposure. You're seeing more people of color at nationals. Not enough, because in some of these urban areas, there's some talent in there, and I know in my career, I was blessed to have kids that come from other cities, like Michael Norman. He moved from New York to come live in Philly. I've had kids come spend a year or a summer from across the country. And that was one of the things that I wanted when I started a team. I wanted kids to say, hey, let me go to Philly. Let me see what they're doing in Philly, and come spend the summer or spend a year to get some training, and like they've never had before, from somebody that looked like them. That's what I was trying to put out there. That's what I continue to sell. Okay, I understand your culture. I understand what you're going through. I understand because I live it. I'm part of it. And so you can talk to me about anything. And I didn't realize that till I did a couple of outreach camps in Colorado. and coaches were invited, and you know, I'm talking about what I did, and talking about why I didn't use a whiteboard in practice. I read out my workout, and I said I want to make the kids accountable. I want them to be aware of what's going on. I want them to focus in on this. I want them to digest the workouts, and then talk to them about some other issues. I had a couple of coaches said, "Coach, I never thought about that," and they had a couple of African American kids in the program, but they never thought that their culture was different than the coach's culture, and what they go through is different than what those kids go through. And if you're aware of that, even being an educator, same thing in the classroom. If you're aware of that, then you're going to be able to reach out, touch them, and get them to develop. Because a philosophy that I have, and I had in the classroom as well, kids don't care what you think until they think that you care. And so that's what I sell, that I care about each and every kid in my program, and get them to understand that they'll swim through a wall for you. They'll do it all. And so I think that's what's up. I think we're on the right track. And I think USA Swimming is the one to get it done. They can get it done. I look at them as the umbrella organization. I look at them as the cure-all, the end-all for everything. They're out there in Colorado. The OIC is out there. So I put a lot of weight on them. Yeah, I put a lot on them, but they've tried to stand up and to do it. So far as I'm concerned, we're doing it, but I think the cities can do more that have pools, open them up, let the community swim, get the community involved. I think the universities can do more. People ask me if I ever wanted to go to college and coach. And I said yes and no. If I took a college, I wanted a college in an urban area where I could have a community team and have kids on campus. Kids get to see campus. I think that's why a lot of my swimmers were successful, because the sport of swimming, most of the meets were on college campuses. They were at great facilities. So I'm taking my kids out of an urban environment. We're traveling somewhere, and they're seeing something like they've never seen. And so they started aspiring to that. And just like I said, I'm starting to write a book and reaching out. I want to tell stories in the book. I had so many swimmers say, Jim, you always said that we were all going to go to college because we were smart. And they said, no, I never thought about college until I met you, Jim. I never thought about going to college until I started swimming for you. So once I heard that, I had to sit down for a minute, take a pause, because all the kids were great. They responded to everything that I asked them to do. So I think we have a lot of work to do, but it's not that it's not being tried. Can we put more effort into it? Yes. Yes. And the bathing suit companies, the sport companies, the athletic companies, yes.
I agree. And everything that you said was extraordinarily powerful, Coach. And we so appreciate having you on. And I think we do have a long way to go. And I'm seeing, even at our local level, you know, Western New York, we're starting to see a lot more diversity in our sport, and it's encouraging, and I'm hoping to see it continue to grow. And I don't think it's possible without you. I really don't think it's possible without you and the model that you set up at PDR. And I
appreciate that. I really appreciate that, because I try to be a model. And another thing, I say, I'm giving you a lot of terms here, man. I'm talking too much here.
I got a lot of notes. Don't worry.
Well, I tell people to dare to be different. Dare to be different in a good sense. Okay? Dare to be different. And when you see other kids doing something else and you're swimming, you're doing this, stick to what you're doing, stick to what you chose. This is your passion. You know, follow it. You know, just because everybody else is doing it, you don't have to do it. And this is what you like, then do it. So dare to be different, man.
Absolutely. I don't want to take up your entire Monday, because you and I could geek out probably all day. But yeah. I do have to ask you this question, because so many people love to talk. I'm a New York guy.
Yeah.
Every person I've ever met from Philly gives me a hard time with sports teams and everything else. Now, listen, Philadelphia has been known to create some of the world's best swim coaches. We're talking about Mike Parado, my coach, Bob Clemmer, Michael Norman, Dick Schulberg, Jack Bowerly, Mark Bernardino. What is it about you guys in Philly? What happened there?
Great. Hey, let me tell you, that's how PDR happened to get good, because if I was going to stay in this area, my kids were going to win some medals. I knew we better be good. And everybody embraced all the events, all the strokes. When I went to swim meet, I looked at results. And in order for me to be successful, I knew I had to function at that level. And so consequently, George Brain, Frank Keith, Bob Matson, Richard Scholberg, anybody that came through Middle Atlantic, I was at their practice. Okay? I was at their practice. I was in their logbook. I was in their library, and I wanted to know what they were doing. And I took it back and adapted it to my program. But the biggest thing about it, they opened their doors, opened their arms. They welcomed me. They didn't hide anything. And it was like a fraternity, Middle Atlantic. Okay, the only other teams that beat us were Florida, California, and Texas. So we were the fifth, probably toughest LSC in the country. And we aspired to that. Our meets were great. Our senior championships were great. Our junior Olympics were great. We had a great organization in Middle Atlantic. And I think that was the ticket that made it that way. It was just an attitude. Oh, I say that word again, attitude. Okay, getting it in, everybody making that effort. And that's what made Middle Atlantic swimming great, man. And you get to a meet, everybody talked about what they were doing. They shared stuff. Sometimes they were training together. All the national kids would go somewhere and train. And I just think that it was just the atmosphere in Middle Atlantic. And I don't know if I'd have been that successful in another LSC. I think I was in the right place at the right time to get it done, especially the way I wanted to do it. And Middle Atlantic was the place for me.
Well, Coach, we so appreciate having you on today. I'm glad we could be patient and get this set up after we had some technical difficulties the first time around. So thank you so much for hanging on and being patient with me. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We got into a lot of great stuff on challenging the athletes with work, but we also talked about some cultural things in our sport that's really important. So I really appreciate your time today, Coach. Everybody who's watching, we will be live tomorrow with Jeremy Lin, Paul Yetter, and John Olson with Fast Times with Jeremy Lin. Make sure to check that out. Yeah, we'll have some registration up for that. And Coach, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being on the Coach's Corner. I look forward to you and I watching some fast swims on deck in Omaha next summer.
Thank you. I appreciate being there. Keep doing what you're doing. It's good. Everybody needs to check in and just get a few tidbits here and there. That's what grows the sport, grows coaches. So thank you. It was a pleasure being there. And I hope people that were listening got something from the program.
Thanks so much, Coach Ellis. And we will talk to all of you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.